We've talked a lot over the years about Louis D. Brown, a promising kid from Dorchester who dreamed of being the country's first black president and was on his way to a Teens Against Gang Violence Christmas party in 1993 when he was shot and killed by a stray bullet in a gang shootout. His mother, as I said, Clementina Cherry, went on to found the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute in his honor and has joined me many times to talk about the work she's done to address the kind of violence that killed her son. Back in 2017, she came on the show along with a man who pled guilty to Louis's murder, Charles Bogues, whose 2012 parole she went on record as not opposing after he spent 16 years in jail.
I know that I have a debt that I owe to the Cherry family and to society.
But since long before that appearance, Bogues has been trying to reverse his guilty plea, accusing Boston prosecutors, even his own lawyer, of talking him into taking responsibility for the shooting. And on December 30th, he released a nearly hour-long YouTube video in which he lays out his case.
This is my story, and it needs to be told because I didn't kill Louis D. Brown.
Charles Bogues joins me with that story now. We invited Clementina Cherry as well, but she declined for the time being, wanting to allow him to share his side. Charles, welcome. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you.
If you did not kill Louis D. Brown, why did you plead guilty to his murder?
When I was dealing with the prosecution office and my previous attorney, they had told me that because I was involved in the shootout, that a bullet probably ricocheted, and that's what killed Louis Brown. A ricocheted bullet that they told me came from a gun that I possessed. And when I was incarcerated, people would be coming in telling me, that you didn't kill that kid. And I started digging into my case, and with the help of one of the judges that allowed me to do ballistical testing, I was able to, in my eyes, prove that I didn't kill Louis Brown. And that's what I lay out in the video, that they knew when I pled guilty that I wasn't the person who killed Louis Brown.
But just so that I'm clear, when you did plead guilty, you did believe that you were responsible for his murder. Is that correct?
Yes, because they told me that a bullet ricocheted. I was, in the gunfight that occurred that day. So I wanted to take responsibility for what they told me that I did.
So you mentioned a minute ago that some of your fellow inmates say you didn't kill Louis. That led you to thinking. You got some legal training in jail from a fellow inmate who was a jailhouse lawyer. You made a request for documents, some of which you got, as you say, after some assistance from a judge. Give us a couple examples of what you were able to receive from those document requests that convinced you that, one, you were not the guy, and two, that the law enforcement people, the cops and the DA, knew you were not the guy.
Well, the first thing that I received was the grand jury minutes of what was said under oath to the grand jury. And at the grand jury hearing, the officers that were involved in the case said that there was only one .45 caliber firearm used that day. And that's how they presented it to me. They said you were the only person that had a .45 caliber, so the bullet ricocheted and killed Louis. And then when I got the documents from a public records request, I was able to present that to a judge, and the judge allowed me to do ballistical testing. And there was actually about 3 different .45s that was fired that day from different individuals. And the shell casing that they said that they attributed to my gun, they didn't match the bullet that they retrieved from Louis Brown. That was the first thing. Second thing was that they had eyewitnesses that actually saw the person who shot and killed Louis Brown, and the person didn't look like me at all. So those 2 factors, plus, when you look at the documents, when the documents are dated, and as opposed to when they convened the grand jury, you can tell that they had all the evidence before they went to the grand jury, and they lied about it.
So you were, let's just be clear for people unfamiliar with the story, even though I'm sure they've heard of Louis, and I'm sure in this community they know his mother and the incredible work she has done in this community. You were there. You did have a .45. You did discharge that weapon. You shot it. So explain again how you know that that was not the weapon, since you did fire it in the area where Lewis was killed? How do you know it wasn't your .45? Simply by virtue of the fact that you contend that the bullets don't match that weapon, is that correct?
No, there's more. When Lewis was killed, I was around the corner from where Lewis was killed. And at my plea hearing, I said in open court, I never saw Lewis that day. I was around the corner from where he was shot. And therein lies the ricochet theory that they presented to me, because I told them when they debriefed me that I was around the corner from where Lewis was killed. I couldn't have shot him. And that's when they told me that a bullet ricocheted. And then when you match where they did find the ballistical evidence that they attributed to me, it is in fact around the corner from where Lewis was shot. So if you take where I was, where the ballistical evidence was found, the fact that he was around the corner, and the fact that the ballistics don't match, then it's evident, along with the eyewitness testimony that was precluded from the grand jury, they knew I didn't kill Lewis. They
So
just wanted to
Charles,
close the case.
Charles, if it's so clear, that evidence, as you suggest, you filed for a new trial, I think it was in 2007. The DA at the time was Dan Conley in Suffolk County. Here's what he said in response to your motion. There's not a single aspect of the evidence suggesting that anyone but Charles Bogues, who pleaded guilty to murder, shot and killed Louis D. Brown. If the evidence was so convincing, why did Conley say what he said?
Because it wasn't. And that's why they never gave me an evidentiary hearing. If it was so convincing and I had nothing to go on, then why would the judge allow me to do ballistical testing? Because if you look at the grand jury testimony that they testified to under oath, they said that there was only 145 discharged at the scene and I was the only person who had one. So why did the ballistics come back? And the Boston police tested the ballistics as also along with my ballistician that the court gave me, and they both came to the same conclusion, that there were multiple 45s fired at the scene. The ballistics didn't match the gun that they said that I had, and that witnesses testified or made statements that they saw the person who killed Lewis, and the person didn't match me physically or in clothing.
So, Charles, do you have a theory as to why 3 years after the fact the cops identified you, why, according to you, they chose not to share exculpatory evidence with you or your lawyers? Why do you think they decided to finger you if you were not the guy?
Because I was there and I had participated in that gunfight, and the gunfight didn't really have anything to do with me, but one of the people that was giving them information fingered me in this case.
So, Louis, you said on that little clip I played a minute ago when you were here with Clementina Cherry in 2017, and you actually spoke at her event with her, I think just right before that, the Mother's Day March for Peace, which focuses on families who have lost people they love to violence every Mother's Day. You said you owed a debt to the Cherry family. If you didn't kill Lewis and you believed in 2017 that you didn't kill Lewis, what was that debt you described to me in the audience?
Because I was in my community doing the wrong things. So that's why I said I owe a debt to her family, and I also owe a debt to the community. And I've been working my hardest since I was released to repay that debt. I go into the prisons and speak to guys. I go to community centers and speak. So the debt, because I didn't kill Lewis, that does not reduce the debt I owe to my community and society as a whole.
Did you speak to Ms. Cherry before you posted that almost hour-long video? And by the way, in it, you explained document by document in great detail why you believe the case is clear that you were not responsible for her son's murder. Did you talk to her before you released that video?
Yes.
And what was her reaction?
I sent her the video before I released it, and I wanted her to see what I was, what I was presenting. I had presented these documents to Ms. Cherry prior to that over the years, but until it's always somebody else telling your story. And unfortunately, my mother had passed away in 2020 and from cancer. And I had a about a 4-month period to really talk to her and talk to her about legacy and the legacy that she left. And we talked about, because my mother also knew about this information. And I had talked to her about, just wanting it to be out there so that being the person who was responsible, that was deemed responsible for Louis Brown's death, I didn't want that to be my legacy. That when people look up my name on the internet, the first thing that comes up is he's the person who killed Louis Brown, and I wanted to dispel that.
For people unfamiliar with the story, while you're still incarcerated, Clementina Cherry reached out to your mother and developed a relationship with her that ultimately she developed with you. When we asked Ms. Cherry to join us, she declined, at least this time. She sent us a statement over the weekend. I'm praying to my God that there can be a deep investigation into this case based on the video and what Mr. Bogues presented. I have so many questions. I've reached out to the new DA, and I'm looking forward to speaking with him in hopes he'll make this and cases like this a priority. And we should say also, at the time that you filed your motion for a new trial in 2007, she's quoted as saying, my fear is that he didn't do it. And she has subsequently said that she was wondering why the law enforcement people didn't go after other people involved in this thing. Charles, do you know who killed Louis Brown?
No, I don't.
Why do you not know? If some people who knew you knew enough to tell you that you were not responsible, did they not know who was responsible?
There's certain questions that you don't ask when you're in the neighborhoods and in the street life. The initial incident that happened with Louis didn't have anything to do with me. I wasn't the target. I wasn't, I was going to the neighborhood to meet up with a friend. And I was, selling drugs and stuff at the time. And that's why I had a gun with me. And the shootout didn't have anything to do with me. And those guys were targeted and I didn't get shot. So after the whole incident happened, I never asked who it was because, again, it didn't have anything to do with me. I wasn't, involved with that.
If the new DA decided to take a look at this case, do you believe that his team plus the police could find out 28 years after the fact who is responsible, who was responsible for Louis's murder if it wasn't you?
I'm not sure. They would have to, talk to their sources and everything to determine that. I never asked because people, when they come and tell you something, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But as I started digging deeper in the roadblock that was, set up before me, I kind of knew that I was on the right track.
I never met Louis, but through his mother, I've learned a lot about him, and he was an incredible young man. And you said at one point, you hoped that your son grew up to be like Louis, that you hoped to push him in the direction of growing up to be like Louis D. Brown was and would have been. Do you still feel that way?
Yes. He was, for all accounts, Louis is an incredible young man. My son is also a very gifted and incredible young man. For our community, for him to grow up without a father in his life physically, and, growing up between his mother and my mother, the women in my family did a tremendous job. He's 32 years old, never been in handcuffs, and that's a blessing to me. Charles, went to college, the whole thing.
Charles, we appreciate your time. We hope to speak to the district attorney about this. We hope to speak to Clementina Cherry about it, and we will stay on this. Thank you very much for giving us some time tonight.
Well, thank you.